We're 12 games into the Billy Donovan era, and the start of it looks a little bit like the end of the Scott Brooks era. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, and this is another Thunder Thursday. Joining me from their various locations are members of our Thunder coverage team from the newsroom, the Oklahoman, downtown Oklahoma City, 100 West Main, columnist Jenny Carlson, and Thunder beat writer Eric Horn. And I believe from his apartment in Oklahoma City, our other Thunder beat writer, Anthony Slater. Anthony, is it fair to say that the start of the Donovan era looks a little bit like the end of the Brooks era?
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, was that a question to me?
That was a question to you, yes, Anthony.
Okay, does the Billy Donovan era look like the end of the Scott Brooks era? A little bit, and maybe not just the end, maybe the entire, the last few years. Obviously the Durant injury is similar, but, I think these are ingrained habits. We're talking about, 7 years of a similar system, same coach. These are the same players, and I think so much of it is predicated off Russell Westbrook and his decision-making and his, strong-willed mentality of how he's going to play. And, a training camp in 12 games, it's going to be hard to break Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook's not just going to start, zipping passes around the perimeter like Chris Paul and, different stuff like that. This is just how he plays. And, I think you'd like to see more progress than we've seen, but I don't think we need to be – or we should be super surprised that, this Russell Westbrook-led Thunder team, especially without Kevin Durant, looks a lot like it did last season.
Eric, so we've got an injury to Kevin Durant, check. Russell Westbrook in full, I got this, I do this, don't get it twisted mode, check. We have Enes Kanter out there ready to do the pick and roll and be a menace on the boards, check. We have difficulty guarding the opposition and other teams' perimeter players approaching career games. Ish Smith on Wednesday night. Monday night in Memphis, it was Mario Chalmers.
Yeah.
Check. So I'll ask you, doesn't this look a little familiar?
Yeah, it does. But at the same time, when you've got two of the top 5 scorers in the world, I don't know what more people want from the Thunder in regard to late game scoring. Now, would you want some of these buckets to come a little easier? Yes. And in the flow of an offense? Yes. But Russell Westbrook last night made a majority of his shots. The rest of the Thunder starters were 8 for 26 in the game. Serge Ibaka shot very poorly. Your first guy off the bench, Dion Waiters, he had a bad night shooting. So when Russell Westbrook can go off for 11 consecutive points and let you pull away from a team that has no business being in the game with you, I don't think you should necessarily complain about instances where Russell Westbrook has taken over the game. Would you like to see some more diversity in the offense late in the games? Yes. But, again, that's going to change, too, when Kevin Durant gets back.
Yeah, let me just say this quick. I think, honestly, I'm not really worried about the offense. If you look through 9 games, through that Wizards game where they blew out Washington, this was the number one efficient offense in the league, averaging over 110 points per 100 possessions, higher than even the Warriors. Then Durant got hurt. It's not looked great the last 3 games. But I think the offense is and will be fine. Where I'm worried about this team is defense. These are the same issues, like you mentioned, that we saw last year in the end of the Scott Brooks era. And I'm not sure the personnel can get much better, and I think that's where we should be concerned about this team.
Jenny, the one unmistakable constant is the incredible will and scoring force of Russell Westbrook. Again, with Kevin Durant, seems like he's bailing the Thunder out. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think it does get a little bit troublesome if it continues once Kevin Durant comes back, but you have to think it won't. I do think, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but Billy Donovan saying today that, he doesn't really want to get into a place where all is reliant on Russell Westbrook, even without Kevin Durant. I think we could see Kevin Durant back fairly quickly, but you still want to get this team thinking more about distributing the ball, sharing the ball, not having to go into hero mode late in games. They're going to put the ball into the hands of their best players in big moments, in big situations. That's the way this league works. But they've got to be more able to move it around, to have other guys get involved. They've got too many offensive weapons to go as stagnant as we've seen them go in some of these late game situations. I mean, 2 field goals in the fourth quarter on Sunday night, I guess it was. I mean, that's the sort of thing that you would have expected out of that Thunder team a year ago when everybody was hurt. But I mean, obviously Durant's hurt, but you've still got so many guys that can score the ball. It's unbelievable that they would go that stagnant during any stretch of the game, including a fourth quarter. They've got to be more able to play through that sort of thing, and obviously they're having some issues there.
Anthony, go ahead.
I was as great as Russell Westbrook is and has been. I mean, some of this blame needs to lie on him, where he's the one that has the ball and he's the one deciding, hey, are we running this set or am I just gonna, will us to a win? I don't think Billy. I mean, he's preaching these things. Russell Westbrook, in a lot of ways, needs to actually implement them in the game and not just panic if they're down or struggling, and just go call his own number all the time.
And to play devil's advocate, I mean, when the rest of the starters go 8 for 26, I can imagine it's kind of hard for Russell Westbrook to say, okay, I'm going to pass it to Serge Ibaka, who's 2 of 8 or 1 of 7 from this point in the game, and let's see if he can create a shot. When Russell Westbrook knows that he can get to the line at will, I can imagine it's kind of difficult for him in those fourth quarter scenarios. So I get what you're saying, Anthony, in that these guys have been ingrained to go to the basket and get their shot for the past 5 to 6 years or ever since they've been in Oklahoma City. So I think it's a part of breaking bad habits, or not so much bad habits, but getting into more efficient habits as they get under Billy Donovan.
Yeah, and guys, I kind of wish it was a situation where, even if they were going to lose games, if it was more, if you saw more evidence of that ball movement, of, some of these tactical competence things that we've, heard so much about from quote unquote tactical competence. If we saw them lose games, but still, employing a different style of ball and sort of really trying to work through some of those issues, I think it would make me, it would make me more, I guess, hopeful, when you think about moving forward. But you just have to wonder, once Kevin Durant comes back, are they going to have reverted back to some of those old ways and then have to work again through that? And I don't know what the answer is. You hope that maybe they just pick up and sort of put this all in the rearview mirror. But you would really like to see them sort of working through some of that, even if it means, taking a loss. If a Serge Ibaka misses a shot, or an Anthony Morrow, Enes Kanter, whoever, would rather see him working through that offense to sort of get used to what that looks like. You have to develop trust now if you ever hope to have it come playoff time.
Anthony, we're 12 games in. The word tactical competence, that's one we throw around a lot. We bold-faced and underlined and italicized it in that press release announcing Billy Donovan's hire. So tell me, when have you seen this tactical competence, available and emphasized or evident in the Thunder in these 12 games?
I thought the offense looked really good in the preseason, and as I just mentioned, I mean, through the first 9 games, this was the most efficient offense in the league. Some of that was just Westbrook and Durant, isolating, but I think there was a lot of games where, you saw the ball movement. I think they had a game where they had 32 assists. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it was when they beat Denver at home. That was more than they ever had last season. They had the Washington game I thought was really impressive, and, one of those halves was without Durant. Westbrook had a triple-double, but, I mean, they were scoring everywhere. They hit 15 threes. So I think there's been times, but the problem is we don't see it consistently enough, and we definitely don't see it late in games. I think there's too much of a, hey, we're only up 3. Hey, we're down 3, and Westbrook just kind of hits panic mode a little bit. Even that Orlando win that was so fun to watch, I think him and Durant kind of hit the panic mode of, hey, they're losing. Let's just do what we know how to do, which is get our own shot.
When does it surface in your mind, Eric? When have you seen it?
Oh, I've seen it early in the season with the way that the bigs were handling the ball. I mean, particularly in the preseason, as Anthony talked about, the way that they were passing the ball earlier in the season was encouraging, and just some of the conversations that Billy Donovan has had about being able to get the bigs out of their comfort zone and have them do things that they're not used to. That was really where I've seen it in some of the uptick and Steven Adams' assist numbers, Enes Kanter's assist numbers, those guys being more involved with touching the ball. But I don't necessarily think that, like, they've regressed, so to speak, but they have gone away from that more so in these past few games. And other than that, I haven't seen a ton of tactical competence, certainly not on the defensive end, as these guys are trying to work through their ball screen responsibilities, particularly from the guards.
Jenny, staying with the Thunder's offense attack and this whole tactical competence question a little bit. Another thing that was emphasized in the preseason was getting easier shots. It seems like the current easiest way to get to the basket, though, is undeniably with Russell Westbrook. I mean, we see some ball movement on the offside. We see the bigs passing the ball a lot more. We see it moving through some people's hands pretty quick. But when you get right down to it, isn't the easiest way for the Thunder to score to have Russell Westbrook initiate it or finish it?
Well, that's certainly a good one. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it. He continues to have that ability to get to the basket that, frankly is there was one point last night where he had a fast break and there were, I think, 3 guys sort of in proximity to him, and yet he finds a way to kind of slither between them, and he's off to the basket for essentially an easy transition bucket that he made look easy. I mean, I'm not really sure it was all that easy, but he just has an ability to really weave through guys and maneuver in a way that, I think we almost take for granted just how easy he makes it look sometimes. But, clearly this isn't a situation where I think that you need to say, Russell Westbrook, become a guy that walks the ball up court and points one finger to the air, to call out an offense, and, and then starts distributing from the top of the key. I mean, I don't think anybody's calling for an offense that does that, because that's not a strength. That's not a strength of Russell Westbrook nor of the Thunder. That's not what they have him there to do. So I think you can still have an offense that moves the ball, but can go through Westbrook. And I have seen some of the bigs. I think they're working better to catch the ball in situations when Westbrook does get in deep and maybe passes off to him. But I don't know that I can point to a ton that I think that there's been Billy Donovan fingerprints on things. I almost wonder, and I'm not trying to give him an escape route, but I almost wonder if these first, month and a half of the season is almost just a little bit of a feeling things out, for not only for Billy Donovan, but look around at all these other assistants he's got who are new to this team. They're trying to figure, just exactly how things do work best. So again, not looking for an out. I have been a little disappointed in, how they've handled things from the coaching perspective. But I do think, let's not be too hasty in saying, well, there's not going to be any noticeable difference between what we see with Billy Donovan and his coaching crew than from before. I'm willing to give it a little more time.
Guys, there's this the specter of how it's looked, which has looked a little bit like the Scott Brooks era. There's a specter of Kevin Durant being injured again. But how does the Golden State Warriors sprint, almost historic sprint, out of the gate factor in how we look at the Thunder? It seems to me that part of any kind of disappointment or any kind of harsh judgment of the Thunder is in part because the Warriors, the defending champs, are threatening to run away. You buying that, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense that, like, if you think back to 2012, when the Thunder made that, run to the finals, and, obviously the Harden trade happened. But, people then thought we'd be viewing the Thunder now as, like, people are viewing the Warriors, which is kind of America's team, fun-loving, all these stars, so many points, so many, like, fantastic performances. And the Warriors have kind of surprisingly taken that mantle over the last, 2 years. And I think, I think within the Thunder, there, I don't want to say jealousy, but, I have a feeling this season, especially in the Warriors games, if they're healthy, they're going to really be going hard after it. And then, from a fan's perspective, there might be a little bit of a jealousy, within the Thunder fan base that, hey, that's what we're supposed to look like. And they just haven't got to that point. A lot of that is through injury troubles that the Warriors have not faced at all. But, it's a reality that the Warriors are a step above everyone else in the league right now.
Eric, Anthony brings up an interesting point, sort of the Warriors being the team that everybody thought the Thunder was going to be, including the darling of the league now, who is not Kevin Durant, even though, my goodness, he's every time you mention the great players, it's Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Steph Curry, the MVP, the guy who everything looks easy to. It seems like Steph Curry has got that mantle has moved over to him. The Warriors are the must-see on League Pass. Everybody stand up at night to see what their scores are. Are we judging the Thunder sort of unfairly against that Warrior standard, especially early in this year?
I think we're judging the league unfairly against the Warriors standard. They're doing some unprecedented stuff. And another thing that's unprecedented about the Warriors is the stretch of good health that they've had in the past year and change. I mean, Alvin Gentry talked about this last night, the Pelicans coach. He was on the Warriors staff last year, and when he was asked a question that wasn't necessarily about the Warriors, he went into all the good fortune that they had in terms of injury and in terms of lacks of injury last year that allowed them to be as great as they were. So you give that to any team in the NBA, and they're going to have much more success than they've had in previous years. You give that to the Thunder, and who knows what they could achieve. Now, the Warriors do also have a special collection of players like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson that allow them to achieve these great offensive and defensive heights. But, I mean, health is the key factor, and everybody else in the league is being judged unfairly because of the Warriors having this great collection of talent and health. But what gets overlooked a lot about the Warriors, too, is that they're playing hellacious defense. And the Thunder aren't playing any defense right now. So it's not unfair to compare the Thunder to the Warriors because despite the offensive accolades that they've achieved so far this year, they're not playing any defense. So once they start playing some defense, then we can kind of size them up and say, okay, what are the Thunder not doing that the Warriors are doing? But it's pretty obvious that they're not playing any defense right now.
Jenny, it's been a long time since we referred to the Thunder and talked about a consistent, excellent defensive effort. Why is that? Why has the Thunder not managed to find that gear and make that part of their permanent character, its permanent character?
Well, I mean, I think it's a good question, and I'm not real sure that I have a great answer. I think that this is a franchise that would like to say, again, another one of these catchphrases that, they've got this defensive disposition, as Sam Presti likes to say. And I don't know how you can say that anymore. When you saw that midseason trade a year ago, they let go of, Kendrick Perkins, who really sort of nailed things down in the middle. For all his, foibles and things that he couldn't do, that was one thing he definitely could do, sort of hold guys accountable defensively, and then also help to shut down that middle. He was great in the pick and roll, and there's no equal to what he was doing, and the accountability is just not there. I think that for so long, the perimeter players, and that includes Westbrook and Durant, they just felt like, if they took a play off, or if they took a moment off, or they let a guy get by him, there was a good chance that either Ibaka or Perkins was going to clean up the mess. And now I think it's falling largely to Serge Ibaka, and I'm just not sure he can clean up that many messes. So, I think it's probably a readjustment of that mind frame that, there's not going to be that help there anymore. These guys are going to have to play on both ends of the court. I think for a long time they could really sort of, really try to focus in offensively for what they were doing down there and, be okay defensively. Well, now you're going to have to see more of a shift in what they give physically, what they give mentally, what they give in preparation, to being better defensive players. Otherwise, it's just going to be track meet stuff. And I think what Eric said is exactly right about the Warriors. For all the talk, everybody wants to, lay on the accolades about the offense, and it's a lot of fun to watch. Those guys got to this level, got to a championship level when they decided to start playing a little bit better defense. Started under Mark Jackson, continued under Steve Kerr when he brought in Ron Adams. But when they decided that they were going to be defensive-minded as well, that's when it all changed for them.
Guys, 2 questions to close us out. First, Kevin Durant. Anthony, what's his status? When will we see him back on the court? I know you are headed to Tulsa for the Oklahoma Hall of Fame inductions. Russell Westbrook going to introduce Kevin Durant. You'll be there for that. When will we see him sort of out of street clothes and back into a Thunder uniform and active?
I think soon. I wouldn't expect Friday. I'd say maybe by Sunday or Monday. He's definitely increasing activity every time I see him. I mean, from what he was doing in Memphis to what he was doing before the game last night to what he was even doing today. I wasn't at practice, but Eric was, and I saw a couple of his videos. I mean, he's ramping it up for sure, and I'd expect at the latest, early next week to mid next week.
How's he look, Eric?
He looks like he's doing all the normal things you'd expect a guy coming off of a grade 1 hamstring strain to be doing. I mean, he was running today full court with Monty Williams and Royale Ivy. They're putting him through some quick fire drills where he's running in between the 3-point line and taking some transition threes. So he's making those moves and those cuts you'd want to see from a guy that's coming back from that. Today was the first time I saw him doing some defensive drills with Monty Williams, where Monty Williams was making him shift from side to side and kind of guard him. So he was showing some more of that quick twitch stuff you'd like to see, and not doing so much of that light stuff, but more some heavy action on his legs. So it was encouraging to see, and I guess Anthony's prognosis would probably be, or prediction would probably be right for the beginning of next week coming up. I'd expect either Sunday or Monday.
Jenny, let's look at the schedule coming up here quickly. Looked like when this was drawn up to be a little bit of a lull, something really without any injected with a lot of pizzazz. But here come the New York Knickerbockers Friday to
Kristaps.
Yeah, Kristaps. And you could talk about that. Then comes Dirk Nowitzki and the Mavs on Sunday. Of course, they go to Utah to play the Jazz early next week. Monday, the Nets right before Thanksgiving, and Reggie Jackson right after. Have I just said, it's sort of the glamour angle here, have I just mentioned the most interesting thing in this 6-game stretch?
Well, I mean, that is pretty interesting. A post-Thanksgiving, a Black Friday game, Reggie Jackson coming back to town, and, sort of all the questions that linger about, what went wrong with Reggie Jackson and really forced the Thunder's hand at the midseason trade deadline last year. But, I think, you look at Dallas this weekend coming in. They've been a bit of a surprise team in the league this year. And here we were, I think it was last week on the Hangout we were talking, maybe in some other circles too, I can't exactly remember, but it seemed like we were talking about how, with the schedule that laid out, the Thunder might have a chance to kind of get on a little bit of a roll, and instead we saw them lose a couple games back-to-back and really kind of struggle, and, so it seems like that, again, I'm sort of looking at that thinking they've got a chance to get on a roll to get things moving a little bit. But, that's obviously been a little bit of an issue for them to find any sort of rhythm and not continue to have fourth quarter issues that pop up, whether it be defensive or offensive or, just a variety of things. So I think it'd be really beneficial for this team to, kind of find its rhythm, and it hasn't yet. I mean, obviously I know Durant's out, but still, like I said before, this is still a really talented team, and to see them sort of, still trying to find a center point is a little bit concerning, frankly. I really thought they'd maybe get some things figured out even without Durant during this stretch.
Anthony, I said 6-game stretch. To make it 6, it would have to be a week from Monday at Atlanta. So in this stretch here, what's caught your eye? What's the most exciting thing on there?
Well, I mean, I think the Jackson thing is interesting. I really am very excited from a personal standpoint to see Kristaps on Friday. That guy's he's an interesting looking player. But one thing I want to see from this Thunder team is to revert back to the home dominance. They have 5 losses this year. 3 are very reasonable, where you had at Houston on a back-to-back, at Chicago on a back-to-back, and at Memphis on a back-to-back without Durant. Those are tough games, especially, in that situation. The ones that I don't think are excusable are Toronto, at home, you blew a lead, and then the Celtics, who are on a long West Coast trip at home, you really folded in the second half. So I want to see this team come out and dominate the Knicks team, come out and beat the Mavericks at home, beat Reggie Jackson's Pistons at home. Those are the games, if you're going to be a 55-60 win team, those are the games you just rack up the wins. And we just haven't seen them do that on a consistent basis.
Eric, get us out of here. First of all, be our pronunciation guide on the Knicks phenom. Say his name correctly.
I'm going to do my best. I believe it's Kristaps Porzingis. He's Kristaps Porzingis, 7'3" Latvian.
You've
been thinking about this guy for years, Eric. Come on.
Years. But this is the thing. Like the reports came out in 2014 about the Thunder reportedly having a promise to this guy in the first round when he was 18 years old. We know how the Thunder are with their promises, and they seem to come true most of the time. So they were going to reportedly draft this guy, and then he ended up pulling out of the draft. And the next year he comes back and he's a top 4 pick. So the Thunder could have had a top 4 pick at the 21st pick in the draft in 2014. They took Mitch McGary instead. Now, the jury hasn't ruled on Mitch McGary yet, so we're not going to completely say he's whatever he is. That's to be determined. But Kristaps seems to be a pretty decent player so far. He's averaging over 13 and 8. He had a career-high 29 last game earlier this week. He looks like he's going to be a good player for the Knicks to build around. They haven't had many of those to build around in the draft in the past few years. He's got a little bit of that Dirk game to him. I'm not going to call him Dirk. But I think that he'll probably have a decent game, but I think that we should also look to the Philly game as an example too, because Serge and Steven Adams beat up on rookie Jahlil Okafor, who came in here with a lot of hype, and they swatted his shots all different ways like beach balls. So I think those guys might be salivating a little bit when Kristaps comes in here with a little bit of hype. They might want to swat him down a peg too.
Can he save Derek Fisher, Eric?
I think having a healthy Carmelo and Kristaps together, and Langston Galloway, he's playing well too. Thunder killer Langston Galloway. So
Is he going to write some poetry on the side? That sounds like a poetry name.
Poet laureate Langston Galloway is going to come in here and drop 20. He's in the 6th man of the year running. So I think those guys combined are just making Derek Fisher look a lot better too. And give credit to Fisher. He's got him at about 5-5, I think. And the Knicks are just playing better basketball altogether. They seem like they got a good idea of what they're actually doing now, and they don't have so many injuries. So it helps to have guys healthy.
An interesting stretch for the Oklahoma City Thunder that starts Friday night at Chesapeake Energy Arena against the Knicks. We'll be there in force. And that's all for this edition of Thunder Thursday, but you can stay with the best coverage team every day on News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman.
See ya.